The first time I realized I might be in love with Eli was somewhere between Columbus and Cincinnati. We were on I-71, windows down despite the October chill, because Eli insisted that road trips need wind. The sun was setting, casting everything in that impossible golden light that makes even gas stations look like cinema. My playlist was winding down, the one I'd spent 3 weeks carefully arranging for maximum casual coolness, and Eli was drumming his fingers against the steering wheel, head tilted back slightly, throat exposed. That's when it hit me, the terror. Not of loving him, but of how easy it would be. I looked away, out the window, pretending to find the Ohio landscape suddenly fascinating. "You good?" Eli asked, not looking away from the road. "Yeah," I lied. "Just thinking about tomorrow." Tomorrow was the first campus tour. Miami of Ohio, then Xavier, then Ohio State. 4 days, 3 universities, 2 best friends, 1 car. What could possibly go wrong? Everything could go wrong. "Max," Eli said, "we've been friends since 9th grade. You think I can't tell when you're in your head?" That was the problem with having a best friend for 7 years. They knew you, all the hidden parts you thought were yours alone. "I'm fine," I said, "just nervous about the whole college thing." Eli nodded, accepting the half-truth. "Well, that's why we're doing this, right? To figure it out together." Together. The word hung between us. We'd always done everything together. Video games until 3 a.m. Camping trips where neither of us knew how to set up a tent. Late-night drives when his parents were fighting or when mine wouldn't stop asking about my future. Eli was the constant in my life, the one person who never needed me to be anything other than exactly who I was. But this trip felt different. 4 days away from home. Just us. "Hey," Eli said, reaching over to punch my arm lightly. "Whatever happens, we still have senior year after this. Plenty of time to freak out about the future later." I smiled at him, trying to ignore the way the sunset painted his profile in gold. We'd be fine. We were just friends. Best friends. That's all. The hotel room was smaller than the website had promised. "Well," Eli said, dropping his duffel bag on the worn carpet, "this is cozy. 1 bed, queen-sized, a TV that probably still had a DVD player, a window overlooking the parking lot. The heater hummed aggressively in the corner, already making the small space too warm. They said they had 2 queens available when I booked," I said, already pulling out my phone to call the front desk. Eli shrugged. "It's fine, dude. We've shared beds at sleepovers before." But that was different. That was before I started noticing things, like how his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck when it got too long, or how he had a habit of biting his lower lip when he was concentrating too hard. "You sure?" I asked, phone already in hand. "Positive," he said, flopping backward onto the bed and bouncing slightly. "Unless I've developed deadly cooties since the last time we had a sleepover." I laughed, the tension breaking slightly. "Your cooties have always been deadly, man." Eli grinned, throwing a pillow at me. "Shower's mine first," he announced, rolling off the bed and grabbing his toiletry bag. While he showered, I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the water run and trying not to think about him under it. I focused instead on unpacking, on checking our itinerary for tomorrow, on anything but the nervous flutter in my stomach. When Eli emerged from the bathroom, hair damp and wearing only sweatpants, I pretended to be very interested in a campus brochure. He smelled like the eucalyptus soap he always carried when we traveled, the same scent that sometimes lingered on my hoodies after he borrowed them. "All yours," he said, gesturing to the bathroom. I took the longest shower of my life, letting the hot water run over me as I tried to talk myself out of whatever I was feeling. It was just proximity, that's all. Too many movies had convinced me that road trips and hotel rooms were somehow romantic. This was Eli, my best friend, the guy who once ate 6 hot dogs on a dare and then threw up in my mom's hydrangeas. The guy who knew all my passwords and still teased me about my 7th grade haircut. By the time I came out, Eli was already in bed, scrolling through his phone. He'd left the lamp on my side turned on. "Hey," he said, not looking up. Your mom texted me. Wanted to make sure we arrived safely since you weren't answering. Of course she did, I sighed, pulling on a t-shirt. My mom had practically adopted Eli years ago. I climbed into bed, hyper-aware of the inches between us. The mattress dipped slightly, gravitating our bodies toward the center. I shifted, trying to maintain a respectful distance without seeming weird about it. This bed has a black hole in the middle, Eli observed, still scrolling. Yeah, I laughed nervously. Sorry about the reservation mix-up. Eli turned to look at me then, his face serious in the dim light. Max, it's really fine. Unless... A mischievous smile spread across his face. Unless you're worried you'll cuddle me in your sleep again. My face burned. That was one time. We were 15 and it was freezing in your basement. You were very clingy, he teased, like a koala. I shoved him lightly. Shut up! He laughed, the sound warming something in my chest. Then he turned off his phone and reached over to turn off the lamp. The room plunged into darkness, with only the faint glow of parking lot lights filtering through the thin curtains. Night, Max, he said, his voice already heavy with sleep. Night, Eli, I whispered back. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to his breathing even out, trying to ignore the heat radiating from his body just inches from mine. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of driving down endless highways, always with Eli beside me, never quite reaching our destination. Miami University's campus was beautiful in the way college brochures promise, but rarely deliver. Red brick buildings with white trim. Trees blazing with autumn colors. Students lounging on expansive greens despite the chill in the air. Our tour guide was a bubbly girl named Ashley, who walked backward with practiced ease as she rattled off facts about student life, academic programs, and dining options. Eli was paying close attention, asking questions about the business program and internship opportunities. I was trying to pay attention. Really, I was. But every time Eli leaned over to whisper some joke or observation, I caught the scent of his shampoo, and my heart would do that stupid lurching thing that made it hard to concentrate. And this is King Library, Ashley announced, gesturing to an imposing building behind her. It's open 24/7 during finals week, and the third floor has these amazing study rooms with whiteboards covering all 4 walls. Eli nudged me. Perfect for your weird study diagrams. He remembered, though. Last year, while studying for AP Biology, I'd covered his entire bedroom wall with post-its illustrating cell division. He teased me about it then, but apparently he'd been paying attention. They're not weird, I defended. They're visual learning aids. They're weird, he insisted with a smile. But effective. You got a 5 on that exam. As the tour continued, I found myself watching Eli more than the campus. The way he tilted his head when he was really listening. How he'd run his hand through his hair when he was processing information. The genuine interest in his eyes, as Ashley described the study abroad programs. They have a semester in Barcelona, he whispered to me. Didn't you say you've always wanted to go to Spain? I had, once, during a late-night conversation months ago when we were lying on the trampoline in his backyard, talking about places we wanted to see before we died. Yeah, I said, surprised he remembered. For the architecture. He grinned. Gaudí, right? The weird, melty-looking buildings. Something warm bloomed in my chest. I had talked about Gaudí exactly once, during a presentation in Spanish class last year. Eli had been half asleep in the back row, or so I thought. Right, I managed. As Ashley led us toward the student center, Eli's hand brushed against mine. A casual touch, the kind that had happened countless times before. But this time, I felt it like an electric current up my arm. I didn't pull away immediately, neither did he. 1 second passed, 2, then someone asked Ashley a question about meal plans, and the moment was gone. After the tour, we found a coffee shop just off campus. It was packed with students, their tables cluttered with laptops and textbooks. We managed to snag a small table in the corner. So, Eli asked, sipping his caramel monstrosity that barely qualified as coffee. What did you think? I shrugged, turning my plain black coffee between my hands. It's nice. The film program seems decent. But not amazing? Not NYU or USC amazing, I admitted. But those are pipe dreams anyway. Eli frowned. Don't say that. Your films are incredible. I looked down, embarrassed by his praise. The short films I made were amateurish at best, shaky camera work and overly dramatic lighting. But Eli had watched every single one, offering suggestions and occasionally appearing as an extremely reluctant actor. What about you? I asked, changing the subject. Did the business school live up to expectations? It was cool, he said, but something in his voice sounded off. But, he sighed, leaning back in his chair. I don't know. Standing there, listening to all the corporate internship opportunities and the six-figure starting salaries, I kept thinking, is this really what I want? This was news to me. I thought business was the plan and since forever. Following in your dad's footsteps and all that. My dad's footsteps, he repeated, a bitter edge to his voice. Yeah. I knew Eli's relationship with his father was complicated. Mr. Thompson had very specific ideas about success. Ideas that didn't include taking gap years or pursuing creative interests or anything that deviated from his prescribed path to prosperity. What would you do? I asked carefully. If you could do anything. Eli looked out the window, his profile outlined by the soft afternoon light. Something that matters, I guess. Something where I'm not just pushing numbers around to make rich people richer. Like what? I don't know. Teaching, maybe? Or environmental science? Something where I can see the impact. He laughed self-consciously. Sounds stupid, right? Not at all, I said quietly. I think you'd be an amazing teacher. He looked at me then, really looked at me, with an intensity that made my breath catch. Yeah? Yeah, I nodded. You've always been patient, and you explain things in a way that makes sense, and you care. That's the most important part. Something shifted in his expression, something soft and vulnerable that I rarely saw. Then he blinked, and it was gone, replaced by his usual easy smile. Well, he said, 1 university down, 2 to go. Plenty of time to figure out the rest of our lives, right? Right, the rest of our lives. Lives that, until now, I had always assumed would be intertwined somehow. But college loomed, promising separate paths, new friends, different experiences. The thought made my stomach twist uncomfortably. Hey, Eli said, reaching across the table to tap my hand. You went somewhere else again. I forced a smile. Just thinking. Dangerous habit, he teased. If only he knew how dangerous my thoughts had become. When we got back to the hotel, Eli suggested we check out the pool. It's probably freezing, I pointed out. Probably, he agreed. But when has that ever stopped us? It was true. We'd been jumping into cold water together since we were kids, rushing into the lake behind his grandparents' house before our bodies could register the shock, daring each other into unheated pools at birthday parties, skinny dipping in the creek that ran through our town one particularly rebellious night sophomore year. That memory, Eli's silhouette in the moonlight, water droplets clinging to his shoulders, was one I'd revisited more often than I cared to admit. Fine, I conceded. But if I get pneumonia and die, you're explaining it to my mother. The pool was on the hotel's lower level, behind glass doors that advertised hours ending at 9 p.m. It was 10:30. It's locked, I said, relieved and disappointed simultaneously. Eli jiggled his handle, then spotted a family exiting through a side door. He caught it before it closed completely. Now it's not, he whispered, gesturing for me to follow. The pool area was deserted, lit only by underwater lights that cast eerie blue patterns across the ceiling. Steam rose from the surface of the water, suggesting it wasn't as cold as I'd feared. See, Eli said, already pulling his shirt over his head. Heated pool. We're in luck. I tried not to stare as he stripped down to his boxers. We'd seen each other in various states of undress countless times over the years, but recently, I'd been finding excuses to look away, afraid my gaze might linger too long or reveal too much. Coming, he asked, already lowering himself into the water. I nodded, pulling off my own clothes with less confidence. By the time I slipped into the water, Eli was already doing lazy backstroke laps across the small pool. The water was pleasantly warm, a stark contrast to the cool air. I ducked under the surface, letting the chlorinated silence envelop me for a moment. When I resurfaced, Eli was watching me with an amused expression. "What?" I asked, wiping water from my eyes. "Nothing," he said. "You just always look so surprised when you come up for air, like you forgot the world existed for a second." That was exactly how it felt, a momentary escape from reality, from my thoughts, from the constant awareness of him. "Maybe I did," I said. Eli floated closer, then, without warning, sent a splash of water directly into my face. "Eli!" I sputtered, blinking away the chlorine sting. His laugh echoed in the empty pool area. "Just making sure you're fully back in reality." I lunged for him, determined to exact revenge. He dodged, surprisingly graceful in the water, and another splash war ensued. We chased each other around the small pool, our laughter bouncing off the walls, echoing louder than was probably safe given our trespassing status. Eventually, breathless and waterlogged, we called a truce. We floated side by side in the deep end, feet occasionally brushing beneath the surface. The overhead lights had automatically dimmed, leaving only the blue glow from below. In that ethereal light, with water droplets clinging to his eyelashes and his hair slicked back, Eli looked almost unreal, like something from a dream I'd been having for years without realizing it. And that's when it truly hit me, beyond the casual observations, beyond the flutter in my stomach, beyond the lingering glances. I was in love with my best friend. Completely, utterly, terrifyingly in love with him. It wasn't a revelation as much as an acknowledgement of something I'd known, but refused to name. "You're staring," Eli said softly, not looking at me. "Sorry," I mumbled, heat rising to my cheeks, despite the cool air on my wet skin. "'S okay," he said, still gazing upward at the ceiling. "I don't mind." What did that mean? I searched for a response, but before I could form words, the lights in the hallway outside flashed on. "Shit," Eli whispered. "Security!" We scrambled out of the pool, grabbing our discarded clothes and darting through a service door Eli had spotted earlier. We found ourselves in a maintenance hallway, dripping wet and stifling laughter like kids who just pulled off a prank. "That was close," I whispered, heart racing from the near discovery, or maybe from something else entirely. Eli grinned, water running down his chest. "Worth it, though." With our clothes clutched to our chests, we made our way back to our room via the service stairs, leaving a trail of footprints that quickly evaporated in the warm hotel air. Back in our room, still damp and giddy from our escape, we took turns in the bathroom changing into dry clothes. When I emerged, Eli was sprawled across the bed, flipping through channels on the ancient TV. "Nothing good on," he announced, settling on some cooking competition. I sat beside him, careful to maintain a safe distance. My hair was still wet, cooling the back of my neck as I leaned against the headboard. "Today was good," Eli said after a while. "Yeah," I agreed, "though I'm not sure Miami is the one. For you or for me?" I shrugged. "Either, both." He nodded thoughtfully. "2 more to go. Maybe we'll find somewhere that feels right." The unspoken question hung between us. Would we choose the same place? Was that even an option we were considering? We'd never explicitly discussed applying to the same colleges, but I'd always harbored a secret hope that we would. "Max," Eli said suddenly, "can I ask you something?" "Always." He hesitated, turning to face me. "Are you seeing anyone?" The question caught me off guard. "What? No. You know I'm not." "Right," he said, "but like, is there someone you're interested in?" My heart pounded so loudly, I was certain he could hear it. "Why do you ask?" He shrugged, trying to appear casual. "Just curious. You've been different lately. Quieter. I wondered if there was a reason." There was a reason. He was the reason. "No," I lied. "No one specific." "Oh." Was that relief in his voice? "Cool." We fell into silence again, the TV providing background noise neither of us was paying attention to. After a while, Eli turned off the TV and the lamp, plunging the room into darkness, save for the faint glow from the parking lot lights filtering through the curtains. We lay side by side, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. The air between us felt charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. "Today was fun," Eli said, his voice quiet in the darkness. "I've missed this." "Missed what?" I asked, equally soft. "Just us," he replied, "doing stupid stuff, having adventures. Sometimes I feel like we've been so focused on the future that we've forgotten how to be us in the present." The honesty in his voice made my chest ache. "I know what you mean." "I don't want to lose this," he continued. "Whatever happens with college, whatever paths we take, I don't want to lose us." Us. The word hung between us, heavy with implications neither of us was addressing. I wanted to tell him then. To turn on my side and confess everything, how my feelings had evolved, how terrified I was of ruining what we had, how I couldn't imagine a future without him in it. But fear kept me silent. Minutes passed, and I thought perhaps he'd fallen asleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the day in my mind. His hand brushing mine during the tour, his silhouette in the pool, the way he'd looked at me when I said he'd be a good teacher. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, Eli spoke again. "Do you ever feel something you're not supposed to?" The question landed like a stone in still water, ripples expanding outward, touching everything. My breath caught. Was he asking what I thought he was asking? Or was I projecting my own feelings onto his innocent question? I lay there, heart pounding, unable to form words, unable to breathe properly. The darkness felt both protective and exposing. How was I supposed to answer that question when my entire being was a response to it? I opened my mouth, still unsure what would come out. Ohio State's campus sprawled before us like a small city, nothing like the intimate grounds of Xavier or the traditional brick facades of Miami. Students streamed past in constant motion, a river of scarlet and gray sweatshirts, backpacks slung over shoulders, lives entirely separate from the quiet revolution happening between Eli and me. "It's huge," I said, taking in the vast open green and the imposing buildings. "Yeah," Eli agreed, standing close enough that our shoulders touched. "Different vibe from yesterday." In the bright October sunshine, with hundreds of students surrounding us, it felt safer to stand this close. We were just two more bodies in the crowd, our connection hidden in plain sight. The tour group assembled near a campus map, at least 20 people this time, a stark contrast to Xavier's intimate gathering. As we waited for our guide, Eli's pinky finger hooked around mine for the briefest moment, a lightning strike of contact that sent warmth rushing up my arm. "Ready?" he asked, his voice casual, but his eyes holding a depth only I could see. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Our guide was an enthusiastic senior named Jessica who walked backward with practiced ease, pointing out landmarks and rattling off statistics about Ohio State's programs, facilities, and achievements. I tried to focus, to absorb information about film studies opportunities and production resources, but my attention kept drifting to Eli, the way sunlight caught in his hair, how his brow furrowed slightly when he was concentrating, the occasional glances he sent my way when he thought no one was looking. During a presentation in the business school, Eli leaned close, his shoulder pressed against mine. "Their film program has connections to studios in New York," he whispered. "Could be good for you." "Their business program is ranked in the top 20, I whispered back. "Could be good for you." He smiled, something zipped and private. "Look at us, planning our future." Our future. The phrase settled in my chest, warm and terrifying. The tour continued across the vast campus, through student centers and libraries, residence halls and dining facilities. We were silent much of the time, but it wasn't the strained silence of yesterday morning. This silence was comfortable, filled with stolen glances and deliberate brushes of our hands when we walked side by side. At lunch in the student union, surrounded by actual OSU students going about their daily lives, Eli sat closer than necessary at our small table. "So," he said, picking at his French fries, What do you think so far? I considered the question, trying to separate my feelings about the university from my feelings about the boy sitting across from me. It's impressive, I said finally. Lot of resources, good film program, but, I shrugged. It's so big. I don't know if I'd get lost here or find myself. Eli nodded thoughtfully. I get that. He pushed his plate aside, leaning forward. Can I tell you something? Always. His eyes met mine, serious and steady. I don't think it matters where we go. I mean, it does, for our careers and stuff. But for us. He trailed off, glancing around at the crowded cafeteria before continuing more quietly. I think we'd be okay anywhere, as long as we're together. The simplicity of it, the certainty in his voice, made my heart swell. Yeah, I managed. I think so too. His smile then was like sunrise, slow, warm, illuminating. After the tour ended, we had a few hours before we needed to head back home. Neither of us was ready to return to reality just yet, to face the questions and complications that waited beyond this bubble we'd created. Let's explore a bit, Eli suggested, nodding toward a path that led away from the main campus. We walked in comfortable silence, following the winding trail until we found ourselves in a small garden tucked between two academic buildings. Despite being just a few hundred feet from the bustling walkways, it was surprisingly empty. Just a few benches surrounding a simple fountain, the space enclosed by tall hedges. Pocket garden, Eli said, looking pleased with our discovery. My mom would love this. We sat on a bench, close enough that our thighs touched. The fountain burbled softly, providing a pleasant background noise that made it feel even more secluded, like we'd stepped out of time. Can we talk about it? I asked quietly, whatever this is. Eli took a deep breath, his knee bouncing slightly, a nervous habit I'd noticed years ago but now found unbearably endearing. Yeah, he said, we should. Yet neither of us spoke immediately, the weight of the conversation ahead, momentarily overwhelming. I've never felt like this before, Eli finally said, his voice low. About anyone. Me neither, I admitted. It's terrifying. He laughed softly. God, yes, terrifying. His hand found mine on the bench between us, our fingers intertwining. But also, I don't know. Right somehow. I looked down at our joined hands, marveling at how natural it felt, how perfectly our fingers fit together. Yeah, I said. Right. I don't know what to call it, he continued. I don't know if I need to call it anything yet, but I know that He broke off, turning to face me fully. I can't stop thinking about you, in ways that are definitely more than friendship. The raw honesty in his voice made my chest ache. I can't stop thinking about you either, I said. I think maybe I've been feeling this way for longer than I realized. I just didn't know what it was. Or I was afraid to know. He nodded, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. For me too. Looking back, there were so many moments where I felt something, but I just pushed it away, told myself it was normal to feel that way about your best friend. When did you know it wasn't? I asked. A soft smile played at his lips. Remember last summer when we went to the lake? You fell asleep on the dock and the sun was setting, and I just sat there watching you breathe for like 20 minutes. I remember thinking, this isn't how you're supposed to look at your friend. But I couldn't look away. The memory of that day flooded back, the warmth of the wooden dock beneath my back, the lulling sound of small waves, the peaceful exhaustion after a day of swimming. I hadn't known he was watching me, hadn't known what was beginning even then. What about you? He asked. When did you know? The pool, I said without hesitation. 2 nights ago, you were swimming and the water was reflecting on your face. And it hit me all at once, like I'd been looking at a puzzle for years without seeing the picture, and suddenly it all came together. Eli's expression softened. And what did you see? In that moment, I met his gaze, letting myself be honest in a way I'd never been before. That I'm in love with you, I said simply. That maybe I have been for a long time. The words hung between us, irrevocable. For a moment, I feared I'd gone too far, said too much. But then Eli lifted his free hand to touch my cheek, so gently it was barely a whisper against my skin. I think I'm in love with you too, he said, his voice breaking slightly on the word love. I'm still figuring it out, but yeah, that's what this is. Time seemed to slow, the world narrowing to just us, just this moment. His hand on my cheek, our fingers intertwined, his eyes searching mine with a question neither of us had the courage to ask yet. Around us, leaves rustled in a gentle breeze. Distant voices and laughter from the main paths reminded us we weren't completely alone. Yet it felt like we were. Like we'd discovered a pocket universe where only we existed. What happens when we go back? I asked, the reality of tomorrow creeping in despite my best efforts to stay in this moment. Eli's expression turned thoughtful. I don't know exactly. We take it slowly, I guess. Figure it out together. His thumb stroked my cheek. I'm not ready to tell everyone yet. I'm still working through what this means for me, for how I've always seen myself. But I know I don't want to go back to pretending this isn't happening. Me neither, I said. No more pretending. His gaze dropped to my lips, just for a second, before meeting my eyes again. Max, he said softly. Can I? Yes, I breathed, not needing him to finish the question. He leaned forward, hesitant at first, then with growing certainty as our lips met. The kiss was gentle, tentative, exploring, yet it sent electricity coursing through my entire body. His hand moved from my cheek to the back of my neck, pulling me closer as the kiss deepened. Every moment that had led us here, every late-night conversation, every lingering glance, every casual touch that wasn't really casual at all, crystallized into this single point of connection. His lips against mine, soft and warm and perfect. When we finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Eli rested his forehead against mine. Wow, he whispered. I laughed softly. Yeah, wow. I've been wanting to do that since that night in the pool, he admitted. I've been wanting you to do that since... I don't even know when, I replied. He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners in the way that had always made my heart skip. We have a lot of catching up to do then. We stayed in that garden until the sun began to dip toward the horizon, talking and laughing and occasionally falling into comfortable silence, our hands rarely separating. We talked about everything and nothing. About what this meant for us, about college plans, about how long we'd each been feeling this way without saying anything. We didn't resolve everything, didn't put definitive labels on what we were or what we would be. But we were honest in a way we'd never been before, with each other or with ourselves. As we finally walked back toward the parking lot, Eli's arm brushed against mine. Whatever happens, he said quietly, this trip was worth it. Even if just for this. I nodded, unable to find words for how profoundly everything had changed in the span of 3 days. How the familiar landscape of our friendship had transformed into something new and unexplored, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Ready to head back? He asked as we reached the car. I looked at him, really looked at him, taking in every detail of his face, now seen through new eyes. Yeah, I said. Let's go home. The drive back was different from the drive out, filled with conversation and laughter, with Eli's hand finding mine whenever he could spare it from the steering wheel, with glances that held new meaning. The Ohio landscape rolled past, golden in the late afternoon sun, and I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe years. As we crossed back into our hometown, reality began to creep in at the edges. Tomorrow meant school, meant friends who didn't know what had happened between us, meant families with expectations and questions. Eli seemed to sense my thoughts, his hand squeezing mine. One day at a time, remember? I nodded, grateful for his steadiness. One day at a time. He pulled into my driveway, turning off the engine, but making no move to get out. For a moment, we sat in silence, both aware that stepping out of the car meant returning to the world, to the complexities that awaited. I don't want this to end, I admitted, Eli turned to me, his expression serious. It's not ending, Max. It's just beginning. In the fading light, with my house looming in the background, he leaned across the center console and kissed me. Not the hesitant exploration of our first kiss, but something deeper, a promise. When we pulled apart, he smiled. That crooked, familiar smile that had always been my favorite, now transformed into something even more precious. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, I echoed. I watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing around the corner. For a moment, I stood in my driveway, looking up at the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. 3 days ago, we'd left as best friends. Uncertain about our futures, but certain about who we were. Now we were returning as something new, something unnamed but undeniable. Whatever came next, whatever labels we eventually chose, whatever challenges we faced, whatever paths we followed, we would face it together. And for now, that was enough. As I walked up to my front door, I couldn't help but smile. We'd set out on this trip to find the perfect college, to map out our futures in neat, predictable lines. Instead, we'd found each other in all the complex, beautiful, terrifying ways two people can discover one another. Some might call it a detour, an unexpected turn in the road. I called it finding home. The end.